Michal started M.U.S.T 4 years ago in other communities around the U.S. with incredible success. Welcome, Michal.
Hi. I just want to start by saying that I am amazed by your community and a little envious because what you're doing here, I think, is setting you up for really amazing success. To do this as a whole is amazing. Okay, so that was a lot, and I totally understand the feelings that you're all feeling, wanting to do something. I had the same feeling just about 4 years ago. We had arranged a summer conference up in the mountains. Dr. David Pelkowitz was coming to speak to the women up there. We do a conference every summer. And the topic that we usually choose is something that the community is having a hard time with. And we decided that the topic was going to be, but everyone has one. And he was going to come and speak to us. The night before the conference, I was having a hard time sleeping. And I was going over in my head, what in the world could he possibly say to help us? We're in such a mess. And I was tossing and turning and thinking about my older kids, who I had given devices to already. I was in between that stage and my younger kids, who didn't yet have devices, and I was wondering, if there was any way that I could prevent them from getting devices. At which point I said to myself, how did this happen? Why did I give my older kids devices, and am I going to have to give my younger kids devices? And I was sitting and thinking, and I said, I did it because there was so much pressure. Their friends were getting them, or that's what I heard. All my friends have one. And it was too hard to say no. And I said, it's so unfair. Why are those other mothers so silly to give their kids devices? Because of them, now I have to do it. And then I said, whoa, 1 second. Maybe they also don't want to give their kids devices, but they're doing it because everybody else is doing it. At which point I said, why don't we all get together and decide together that we don't want our kids to have devices, and none of us will feel that pressure to get our kids devices. It seemed really simple. So the next morning, after not getting much sleep, Dr. Pelkowitz came and he sat in my bungalow before he went to go speak, and he was drinking his cup of coffee. And I said, he's a very, very wise man. And I was a little intimidated to present my solution, which seemed so simple. And I asked him, can I ask you, I have a crazy idea. And he said, sure, I would love to hear it. And I told him what I was thinking. And I said, how about if I just get in touch with the other mothers in my kids' class and I say, why are we all doing this? Does anybody else want to be doing this? Because I really don't want my kids to have devices. And then maybe we can all get together and together say, let's hold off. And he said, I absolutely love your idea. I love it so much that when I go up to speak in a half an hour, I'm going to be introducing you, and I want you to present this program today. And I was like, ooh, okay. I didn't even have a name. I was sitting next to a friend, and I said, okay, quick, we need a name. We're going up right now. And she said, we're calling it M.U.S.T. Mothers Unite to Stall Technology. The hashgacha was really amazing because we didn't have much time to think it through. But the verbiage is so perfect because what the other speakers were saying, we're not saying we're never going to have technology. We're not saying that our kids won't eventually have it. All we want to do is stall. We want to hold it off for a little longer and a little longer and a little longer until their precious little brains develop and they learn how to play with their friends and they learn how to talk and to communicate. And that's all we want to do. All we want to do is hold off and stall for a little bit. So that was what I presented that day. And I think I did something a little risky, but I think I might do it again. And that was that I said to the women in the room, I want to take a survey. I want to ask that everybody in the room, if you fit into either one of these two categories, please raise your hand. Category number 1, if your child doesn't yet have a device and you would like to hold off for as long as possible, please raise your hand. Keep your hands up. If your child does have a device and you wish that you wouldn't have gotten it for them and that you would have held off, please raise your hand. Okay, keep your hands up. Everybody please look around, okay? Men's section, the ladies section, I don't think there's any hands that are not up. I can't see them if they are, okay? So what I want you to take from this survey, this happened exactly the same thing 4 years ago, by the way. And I want you to take from this that you have the power to do this. we're all in this together. We all feel the same way. We're giving in because other people are giving in, but nobody else wants to be giving in. So let's all stop giving in. And then we can hold off and let our kids develop in a healthy way. Now, nobody else could do this for us, okay? We've come to this discovery. The schools have tried. The rabbis have tried. The mental health professionals have tried. And at this point, I think that we've come to realize that if the parents are not going to do it, I'm sorry that we call it must. We can add on dust to the website. But if the parents are not going to do this, nobody's doing this for us. Our kids are so precious to us. We're the only ones that can actually make a difference. Now, I want to explain something to you. The schools have really tried, okay? And I want to tell you 4 reasons why what the school did not work and why what M.U.S.T does work, okay? Number 1. Schools are free to make rules for their 9 to 5 hours. That's what parents feel. You want to tell my kid what uniform to wear. You want to tell them what their behavior has to be during the school day. Whatever you want to do during school hours, that's fine. But once it comes to after school, it's really don't tell me what to do. Okay? This is how a lot of parents feel. Issue number 2. When a school makes a rule, it's generally a blanket rule, grades 1 through 8, or kindergarten through 8. Okay, so that's a big problem because an issue that a kindergarten or a first grader is having is totally a joke to somebody who's in 7th or 8th grade, and an issue that a 7th or 8th grader is having is completely irrelevant to the kindergarten or first grader. Problem number 2. Now we're on to 3. The third problem is that by the time the schools realize that there's an issue, this is what's been happening over the last few years, they make the rule and the issue has already spread, and it's too late. They make a rule of something that's already pretty widespread and is already a problem. So it's really hard to implement a rule that already happened. Especially one of the concepts of must is that you can't go back. But I'll explain that in a minute. The fourth thing is that when you have a school rule that comes against peer pressure, so the school makes a rule, but you're being pressured by your kid because the whole class doesn't listen to the school rule, but everybody has one, most of the time parents are not strong enough to stick with the school rule. They'll rather give in to the peer pressure, and they'll give their kids a device. Okay, so those are the 4 issues that we've had in schools trying to make rules. How does M.U.S.T differ? I'm going to tell you with each one of these 4 things how we have a different plan and why it works so much better. The first one, the parents don't like the school to make the rules. M.U.S.T is completely parent-driven. We decide what we want for our kids. Nobody's telling us what to do. The second one, the schools make blanket rules through 1 through 8. M.U.S.T is very, very tailored to each class, to each grade, to whatever's going on in that particular class. Very not blanket. The third one is making the rules too late. M.U.S.T, like I said before, M.U.S.T deals with the reality of what's going on right now. M.U.S.T has a concept, I'm sorry to tell you because it will be a little disappointing for those of you that don't know, is that it is very, very difficult to take something away that your child has already gotten used to. If you already gave your kid a device, it's nearly impossible to go back. So that's another thing that's different between the rules, the decisions that we make and the rules that the school sets up. And the last thing is that when we're talking about the parents having to give into the peer pressure versus the rules, we are taking the peer pressure and we are completely flipping it around and making it into a positive peer pressure. The peer pressure to be like everybody else who doesn't have a device. And when your kid comes home and said, but everybody, no, sweetheart, everybody doesn't. The mommies in the class actually got together and we all decided that we're so happy for you to play outside and talk to friends. So those are the 4 reasons that the M.U.S.T program works better than school rules. Okay, now I'm going to explain how the program works. Just as background, the program that we're talking about stalling, we specifically are referring, and you can do it how you want because it's tailor-made for however you choose. We allow a lot of flexibility. But we are referring to personal devices, which means we're not telling you can never let your kid use any technology in the house. We're not telling you can't let them watch videos. We're not telling you they can't do something on your phone. That's obviously your decision. What we are suggesting is do not get your kid their own personal device. Once they have their own device, it's downhill really quick. They take ownership of it. They do things with it that, they don't have to ask you for permission when they use it. It's theirs. You don't even get to look at it and see what they're doing on it. And like Simcha mentioned before, another just background concept is I wanted to tell you also and echo what she said, that this is not a Jewish concept. And shortly after we created this program, we discovered that there was another program that was extremely similar to ours called Wait Till 8th. It's a program in the Midwest that a bunch of mothers started, not Jewish, and their concept is exactly like ours. They sign a pact to hold off until 8th grade or the end of 8th grade to get their kids' devices. So this has nothing to do with Jewish, religious, nothing. Okay, I'm going to explain the program in two parts, just to keep it very clear and brief. I'm going to explain the easy, ideal way to set up the program, and I'm going to explain the a little bit harder and less fantastic way to do it, okay? The best way to set up this program is when your child is young, okay? Like young enough that the other parents in the class might say to you, really? Of course they don't have devices. That's exactly the words you want to hear. Because when you're in a situation where nobody in the class has a device, your pact will be a joke to set up. I'll just give you a personal example. I did this for my daughter, who is now in fourth grade, and we did it when she was going into first. And the mothers at first were like, this is such a silly conversation. But you know what? There are fourth grade classes now that have devices, lots of them, and our class is not even talking about it. Not one kid has asked, because we did this when they were young, and there was no anybody fighting back. The kids they didn't know about it. They were like young, and there was no concept of, Ma, what are you doing? Or anything along those lines. And it was super simple, because sometimes when a couple of kids in the class have a device, those mothers feel uncomfortable with their decision, and it's very hard to get a pact in the class, because there's a lot of feelings that you're playing around with, and it's hard to make a pact when there are people that have and people that haven't. And when you start very young, it's literally a joke. So that is number one. Now, what it's going to look like in that sort of class is you're going to agree to make a pact. You can look on the website. It's themustproject.org. We recommend something called the preferred pact, which is the pact that you can make if there's no technology yet in your class. It basically is an agreement to hold off from all technology, your child having any sort of device, for as long as possible. You'll continue to do check-ins with your class. We usually recommend twice a year. Are we still all on the same page? Let's continue this. Does everybody want to carry it out for another year? And that's what the preferred pact looks like. There are plenty of options to add on to it. Like different tailor-made things that you want to maybe, make an agreement in the class that at a certain time there's no more technology at all. There's plenty of options. But that's what the best option for you is to start this young, okay? Once there's technology involvement in the class, even if it's a small percentage, it gets much more complicated. Okay, but at the same time, I will not discourage you. There are still options to do the program. And I will explain to you what they are, but they come with a caveat that I'm going to tell you at the end of the description of what you can do, okay? If your class already has a technology involvement, then what we recommend is, it's called a pause pact, P-A-U-S-E, to pause. Wherever your class currently is, stop. Say, we are not going past this point. The reason it's complicated is because your class may be at many different points. So you could make a two-tiered pact. It's complicated. That's why I'm encouraging you, the younger, the better. And when I say younger, I say pre-1A, first grade, elementary school, young elementary school. So now you have this class that has, already classroom technology involvement. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out a spot, the best, most comfortable spot that everybody can pause. I'll just give you an example. It might be that the kids have devices, but they have no social media. So you as a class will get together and discuss. Let's all agree that we're not going to progress to social media. Our kids are on their devices. We allow them to take pictures. They text, but let's pause. Because what happens with technology, and anybody who has a kid that has a device knows this, technology naturally progresses. This week they will have one thing. Next week they're going to ask you for something else. They're going to have more apps. And the only way that it doesn't progress is if you actively stop it. So having a pause pact may not look very different because things will stay the same as they were, but it will be different as compared to a class that has no pact. In 2 years, you will look much better than a class that has no pact, okay? And the second thing that you can do in this sort of situation when there is already involvement of technology in the classroom is what we recommend is come up with the options of making a pact of things that you can do to reduce or eliminate the peer pressure. In other words, Respect thy neighbor. You allow your child to do certain things at home. Let's try very, very hard to not make it contagious. Let's make different agreements that we can hold it back. And you want to have it in your house, that's okay. But let's be respectful of other people's rules and other people's boundaries. And let's allow them the ability to make decisions without having your decisions pressure them to make decisions, okay? I'm going to give you some examples just to make it a little bit more clear of what I mean by this, okay? So these are some agreements that different classes have done that reduce or eliminate peer pressure. 1, no devices should be brought to other people's homes. If your child is going to visit somebody, the agreement in the class is don't bring any devices when you're visiting somebody else. Number 2, no devices come out when you're hosting. If your kid has a friend over, also keep this the same way we used to do in the old days. If you would call a mother and ask her, can your kid watch this video? You don't let people's kids watch things in your house without permission. Don't bring out devices without permission. No devices at get-togethers. I heard that sad story about a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah that nobody was even participating because they were on devices. That's this concept. Do not allow the kids to have their devices at get-togethers, at school events. Another piece that some people did is an agreed upon curfew of what time the technology goes off. If the kids already have devices, let's at least all agree that by whatever, I don't know what age we're talking about, so it depends on the age. Let's agree that by 9:30, everybody shuts it down. That helps because at least you know that you're all in agreement that the phone goes off at a certain time. And in addition, if there's like some kids that are not allowed to stay on or some kids that don't have any devices at all, and if there's a class chat going on all night, this helps to reduce the peer pressure by shutting it all down at the same time. Another thing is an agreement to not have the device sleep in the kid's bedroom. If they already have a device, let's at least agree as a class it doesn't get charged or sleep in their room with them. Another one is, this is a very powerful one, no class chats. Yes, the kids have devices, but once there's a class chat, kids who don't have devices are very left out, and why should you impose your beliefs on everybody else? And the last thing is that if your child is allowed to do certain things in your home, for example, like multiplayer games, like Fortnite, something like that, encourage your kid and say, listen, we're okay with it. We're okay to let you play it. That's our decision. Don't go to school and talk about it with everybody else. Don't talk to the other 2 kids whose mothers let them, and all the other kids are hearing and saying, what's that? And let's keep our stuff in our own homes, and let's respect other people's boundaries, okay? I told you that I was going to include a caveat here. Very often, when the classes have more technology involvement, it's usually because they're a little older, hopefully. Another piece comes in when the class is a little older, which is that you have to realize that when the kids are older, they sometimes have a little bit of an issue of you getting involved and making a pact in the class. Like if your kid's already in 7th grade, it could be that they're going to be like very embarrassed that their mother is organizing and getting a meeting together and setting up what pact we're making. And it's dangerous. So my caveat is that if you're risking your relationship with your child, don't do it. Your relationship with your child is more important than making a pact and holding back the technology. You'll do other things. You'll empower the kids to do things on their own, but don't get involved if it's going to cause an issue with a relationship with a child. I just want to give you a story just to strengthen this point because it really, really is super important, which is why we encourage, again, do this as young as possible because the older they get, the more complicated it gets. A particular mother decided in her class, she heard the boys were starting to do Fortnite. This was in an 8th grade. And it was in a 9th grade. And she sent out to the class chat, between me and you, quietly, are there a lot of mothers that are okay with this Fortnite game? I don't know if everybody knows what Fortnite is, but there's a lot of other games that are like it. It's basically a game that you can connect with other kids that you know and kids that you don't know and adults that you don't know and you don't realize that they're adults, and you connect with strangers, and it's very, very addictive. In addition, so there's several issues with this game, and there are many others like it. They're called multiplayer games. And this mother presented to the class, do other mothers also have a hesitation? Maybe we should make an agreement. It was pre-M.U.S.T. Maybe we should make an agreement that let's just not let the boys play. And lots of the mothers were in agreement. That sounds great. Thanks so much for bringing this up. The mother who presented this on the class chat, her son came home from school, and a couple hours after he came home from school, and these kids already had devices, was chatting with his kids, with his friends, texting back and forth, and he came to his mother extremely angry with a picture on his phone, a screenshot of the chat, of the mother's chat, And he said to his mother, "Why'd you do this to me?" And apparently, one of the mothers allowed their child use of their phone. And he was surfing and checking out what his mother was up to. And he took a picture of the conversation and sent it to his friend, whose mother presented it. This story happened to me. This was my son. And it took a long time to repair this relationship. Thank God it is in a much, much better place. We're great now. But I just want you to know that this is something to be very cautious of. And it's an encouragement to start the program younger also. I'm not saying you can't do it older, just be careful. Okay? And like I think Rabbi Lipsker was saying, I can't remember who it was, but you really have the power right now to change the status quo. It takes time and it takes patience, and you're not going to see the changes immediately. But if we can go from the norm being kids starting to get devices in fill in the blank, every community is different, in whatever grade it is, if we can blast this to the pre-1A, first grade, second grade, the grades that it's still applicable to, third grade, fourth grade, our communities could look different in a few years. It's slow progress, but it's huge. It's a complete change. It's the changing of the course of the ship. It's brilliant. You can do it, and you just have to be empowered, and don't give up. It is a success if you hold it off by 1 year. Everything is a success. Don't give up. Push and hold tight, and it's worth every second. I want to address a question that's come up a few times, because I think this is really important. A few parents have expressed the concern, if I gave my older kid a phone, and I gave my second kid a phone, when they were both in 9th grade, how can I, or whatever grade you gave it in, how can I tell my next kid, I'm not giving it to you? It's not fair. I made a deal. I made it with the other ones. How can I not give it to my next one? And I'm going to answer with a story. If you were serving your children a certain type of bread from the time that they were little, and you gave it to your first child, and you gave it to your second child, and you gave it to your third, and when your fourth child was in kindergarten, you found out that this bread had a certain toxin in it that wasn't good for your kids. There was something about it that was making your children sick. Would you continue to give the bread to your kid just because you gave it to the other kids? I don't think so. I think you would say to your kids, sweetheart, I love you so much. If I would have known this bread was bad, I never would have given it to the older kids. I didn't know. Mommies make mistakes. And that's exactly the same conversation you can have with a device. We made mistakes. We learned. This is like Dr. Rosen was saying, this is an experiment gone bad. We didn't know. We didn't know that it was so bad. And now we know. And sweetie, I love you so much. I'm not going to give you something that's going to hurt you. Okay. I want to leave you with the success stories, okay? I asked some of the mothers to send me in quotes from some of the schools and the classes that have started, and I want to give you some success stories, but I want to repeat, success is everything is success. Any little bit that you can stall and hold off is a huge success. Okay, success story number 1. I presented the M.U.S.T program to my daughter's class right before 6th grade. Parents thanked us with tears because some were about to cave. The class held out from even one girl getting a device till almost the end of 8th grade. Then Corona hit. Oh well, but what a huge success. This is like a theme a little bit, like Corona really made things difficult. So let's hope that moving here forward, you're not going to have, God forbid, something that's going to cause such a difficulty. But the moms of my daughter's friends in other schools were blown away and a little envious. This class held off for 2.5 years, okay? From the mom of a current 8th grader, the M.U.S.T program was so successful. We started in 5th grade. The class 2 grades above my daughter's already had chat starting in 6th grade. And because of M.U.S.T, our class had no group texts or chat situations until Corona. I think because of M.U.S.T, even with Corona, many still don't have their own devices because the mothers knew they were on the same page. I want to mention that. That's huge. Just knowing that other mothers are on the same page as you makes a huge difference. Mom of a 4th grader in a community where many 4th graders already have devices. I don't feel any pressure from Atara's grade, and I'm sure it has to do with M.U.S.T. So good we did it when they were young, going into 2nd grade. Okay, that's when they did it. My son is in 6th grade. We made a pact almost 3 years ago to not get the boys their own devices. One of the mothers suggested also agreeing not to let them play multiplayer games like Fortnite, etc. I wasn't even sure then why it was bad, but she had older boys, so she knew better. Wow, these boys in our class play football on Fridays, and arrange class baseball games in the park on their own on Sundays. That is amazing. After a few mothers, this is what I'm telling you about updating. After a few mothers recently started to allow their sons to play a multiplayer game, the class updated the Pact because most of the class did not want to play games. They didn't want their kids to play games. The class updated the Pact that the games would not be a topic to be discussed with classmates. That was where I got that suggestion from this class. Okay, the last one. Mother of an 8th grade girl. Okay, she said, M.U.S.T gave me the freedom to make decisions for my daughter without the pressure of everyone else has. So this was a success story actually in 8th grade. So there is hope. There is hope. And I feel like if anybody can do it, it's you. So now it's time for Crown Heights to go off and try and do your thing. And you guys can now create your own success stories, and I can't wait to hear about them.